What's up, fishies? I know it's been at least 3 weeks. We're not officially back yet. We've still got about 11 weeks to go on our winter break. Hopefully by then I've got materials built up enough and it'll definitely be warmer because it's pretty cold this morning. But after break, we'll come back. Of course, today's video is a special video. Mom has been kind enough to join us to teach us something interesting and new. It's something that you'd never think in a million years could be done unless you've done it before. Of course, a lot of people know about divining water. That's where you take divining rods or tree branch and you find water. Water lines, water spring under the ground. Well, today we're not doing that. Mom's actually going to show us how to divine for bodies. That's right. I said bodies. And I know that sounds really creepy, but at the same time it's kind of cool because much like divining water, you can use similar methods to find a body. And from what Mom just told me, you can even determine gender also. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but we're here at the Nennecaw Cemetery and Mom's going to show us how to do this. So y'all stay tuned because this is going to be interesting.
All right, I would like to go over and either do it on Grandma and Grandpa's graves because that's family.
Okay.
Or Mom and Daddy's, but Grandma and Grandpa's is a few feet closer. So
is there a difference between divining for water and divining for bodies?
No, it's all the same process.
It doesn't move a different direction for a body versus water?
No. Well, with water, you want to have them already pointed. And when you hit water, it'll pull downward if it's water. But if it's just something that's buried, it'll move. And it doesn't always prove there's a body.
And you were saying that you could tell gender.
Yes.
How is that?
Well, I will show you with a couple of graves here. We're going to do my grandparents. This is my grandpa, William David Howard. We know he's male. My grandmother, Gerthy Viola Howard, we know she's female. Grave dowsing is a very ancient art. It's been used for centuries to locate bodies, anything buried in the ground, and water. But we're going to demonstrate grave dowsing. Typically, you want to use 2 metal rods. A lot of people use a straightened coat hanger. Any type of metal will work, but copper is your best for grave dowsing. And what I've done is just gotten a couple of pieces of lightweight copper. I've put little copper rods on the end so that they swing freely. This keeps me from influencing how these rods will swing. So the first thing you want to do if you want to determine if there's a body buried in a grave that especially is not marked, you would start at typically where the head would be. Christian burials, the head will always be at the west end of the grave, facing east. And this is because of Christian beliefs that when the dead in Christ rise, they will be facing the east to meet Jesus. So I'm going to start here at the head of Grandpa's grave. And if there is a body buried here, these rods will cross as soon as it detects that burial. So I'm going to start out just holding the rods at waist level where they can swing freely of their own accord. And you can tell the rods are beginning to swing. And you can determine the length of the grave by walking slowly. And when you reach the end of it, the rods will uncross.
Wow.
So, if it's a child's grave, which a few feet over, there is a baby buried. We'll do that one in a moment. But this shows that Grandpa was probably at least 6 feet tall because of the length that I walked. And my grandpa was about 6'3", 6'4". So next I'm going to do my grandma, and then I'll show you how we determine the gender of that person in that grave. All right, starting at the head. And you typically go from head to foot. And the rods are crossing. We have some wind today, so that has a little bit of bearing on it. All right, so now we are at the end of her grave. And Grandma was also a tall woman. She was probably 5'10", 5'11", and the length of her grave indicates that she was a taller woman. All right, now we're going to determine gender. And to do that, you're going to get on the north side of that grave, step back so that you know you're not over it. Hold one of the rods just loosely in your left hand. And when you walk across the grave, you notice it's swinging to the feet. That indicates a female. And once you get beyond the edge of the grave, it'll swing back. So now we're going to go across Grandpa's grave. And you'll notice it swings to the head.
That's pretty neat.
Now this is typically because the man is considered the head of the household. So that's why that rod will swing to where the head is. And many centuries ago, it was believed that the woman was beneath the man's feet. This next grave is my aunt. So there again, proving she's a female.
Wow.
There are other methods that you can use as well. Typically, the one I just demonstrated is the one I like the best. But you can also balance the tip of your finger with it. We've probably got too much wind today for it to be very accurate. But when you get over the grave, the rod is supposed to spin. I've never had much luck with it doing it, and like I say, it's very windy today, so I don't think it will spin. But that is another method that a lot of grave dowsers prefer. We're going to test this baby. It's an unknown baby. Cemetery records show that the baby's last name should have been McClellan, and we do know that it was supposed to be a girl. So we're going to test and see how long the grave is. See, and it starts crossing immediately and swings back almost immediately. So
it's definitely an infant.
Yes, very small child. She could have been up to a year old. We don't know. Cemetery records didn't have a date of even when she was born or died, but determine then that it is a female infant. And it's
Goes towards the feet.
swinging to the feet. So we know that it is a female. Grave dowsing is very, very helpful in a cemetery, especially the one the size of our cemetery. We have many unknown graves. A lot of them we don't know who they are. We follow old obituaries, and that's how we've been able to determine that, yes, we know some of these people are buried here,
but you don't know where
but
exactly.
we don't exactly know where. We have had some luck in identifying some of them from looking at old cemetery maps that says this plot of ground belonged to Jane and John Doe. We come across an obituary that, lo and behold, says Jane and John Doe were buried on such and such dates in the Ninnekah Cemetery. So we can go to that lot that had belonged to them, scan it, douse it, and if it reveals there are bodies there, then we can pretty well assume that, yes, this is Jane and John Doe. And by determining the sex with the one rod, we know which gray spot is whose. I own some lots a few feet further south that my daddy had purchased back in the 60s. We knew there were already 2 graves on it because there are 2 headstones there. And recently I discovered 2 unknown graves in that lot, and determined that one is a male and one is a female. Typically, with Christian burials, the man will be buried on the right side of the grave, and the female will be buried on the left side of the grave. These 2 particular graves, the female's on the right and the male is on the left, and he is actually out in the walkway, which most cemeteries are laid out where your lots are anywhere from 4 to 6 grave spaces, depending on how it was originally set up. This cemetery has 3 different types. We have 4-foot plots or lots. We have some that are 5 grave lots, and then some who are 6 if you pack them in a little tighter. And with cremains, you could put as many as you want, and those are a little more difficult to determine. But cremation was not a known practice 100 years ago, and a lot of the unknown graves here, they are well over 100 years old. So, like I say, grave dowsing is very beneficial when you know you have burials, but you don't know where they're at. We have located many unknown graves, and we are now attempting to try to track down and determine who those people might be. I believe the man and woman that are buried in my lot is a mother and son. The mother died earlier in the year in 1929. She and her husband lived in Ellick and had previously lived in the Ninnekah area. She's buried right in the very corner of the lot, which indicates the intent was he would later be buried on the south side of her, to her right. The male, which I believe is her son, he died several months later. He was a soldier at Fort Kearny, Nebraska, and they were doing a training exercise. And details are very sketchy, but he was shot to death somehow in that training exercise. and they sent his body back to Oklahoma, and he was buried here in the Ninnekal Cemetery. We know that on the mother and son both from obituaries that we found. So I believe those two graves on my lot are this mother and son, because he's buried in the walkway. They would not have wanted to bury him on the other side of his mother. But that's just speculation. We don't know that for sure. But it makes sense that that's who it would be.
Right.
So, like I say, grave dowsing, I've been into it for about 2 years now.
Well, what got you into it?
Well, the secretary of our cemetery board, she's the one that got me interested in being on the cemetery board with them. And she showed me how to do it. So I've done some research on it and determined, just from looking at videos, there are all kinds of videos on YouTube, that copper really works the best. Your body has a magnetic field to it. And scientific reasoning is that's what makes the rods swing, is that magnetic field is always there. It never goes away. And that is what triggers the rods to move. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. But you can walk over proven graves that you know are male and female, that yes, there is someone buried there, and it proves out. So when you're scanning or dowsing just an empty area to see if there's someone buried, you have a good idea that yes, there really is someone there, if those rods are crossing and uncrossing the length of the grave. And another way you can tell sometimes if there's a grave there that is not marked, the ground will have an indentation to it. It'll be lower. Sometimes the grass looks just a little bit different. It grows just a little bit differently.
And you can really tell things like that from aerial shots.
Yes, yes. And a couple of years ago, we had a firm out of Edmond, Oklahoma come down with radar to do a lot. It was an area that I have 2 cousins buried on. And from what my mother had always told me, I knew the general area of the cemetery where they were supposed to be buried. So these 2 gentlemen come down, and the machine that they use kind of looks like a lawnmower. And they, it needs to be a bright, sunshiny day and warm for it to work its best. And so they scanned over that grave, and they determined that yes, there were 3 bodies buried in that particular area. One they knew was an adult, and the other 2 were children. So I'm like, who can the adult be? Well, I came across the obituary for these 2 children's mother's sister who had died. She died first in early 1930. And I believe she's the one that is buried in the corner, and the 2 girls are buried to the south of her. The lot, we discovered, had belonged to these 2 little girls' grandpa and grandma. So I'm 100% convinced that those 2 children are my 2 cousins. Don't really have any way of knowing which one is which, because they're both female. So when we put down grave markers for them, we just put them on there.
And hope you got it right.
Hope we got it right, absolutely. Because both girls, they died about a year apart. One was 9 and the other was 5. So size-wise, they were close to the same size.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to determine which one would have been which, since they were so close in
Right.
size
And
age.
unless there's actual paper records that state it.
Yeah, which spot they were put in. And if there were any records from 1935 and 1936 is when they died, those are long gone. You know,
Wow.
There was a fire in 2012 that the previous cemetery sexton had in his possession. His home was lost in that wildfire. So we lost a lot of cemetery records at the time.
And there's no other place that they could be.
No, and
or at least that's known to y'all anyways.
I did get copies of my cousin's death certificates from the state, and all it confirms is that yes, they were buried in the Nennecaw Cemetery, but it does not have the spot, space, or anything of where they were buried. But because of that lot belonging to their grandpa, their maternal grandpa, I'm 99% sure that yes, it's them.
Wow.
So, a lot of things you can find out. Cemeteries are a wonderful genealogy tool.
Right.
And Find a Grave is a very good website. It's free to use, free to join. It's a database of literally billions of graves around the world. I keep up with it for our cemetery because we have contributors that will create a memorial based on an obituary. That's how we have found some of these people and identified them, is from me following Find a Grave and finding someone that created a memorial based on an obituary that they found.
Right.
So
in other words, if there's people out there that know they have family members buried out here but aren't exactly sure
correct.
where they're buried, then they need to be reaching out.
Right.
To
And we had that. We just recently had a headstone put out for a man that died in 1929.
wow.
His great-granddaughter knew he was supposed to be buried here, but she did not have any idea where. Well, come to find out, the man's son was buried here. So I came out, I doused the grave, and I got a hit, and it proved to be a male. So we're 99% sure that yes, and the granddaughter got to looking and found where, yes, he was supposed to have been buried on a relative's lot. So that kind of sealed the deal that yes, that's where this gentleman was buried. So she paid to have a headstone put out on her great-grandpa's grave.
Wow.
So, you have a lot of success stories.
Right. And I'm sure Ancestry DNA, has probably played a part in it some too.
To a certain extent. Not as much as Find a Grave, though, because it deals more with the actual burials. You can use Ancestry a lot of times to find information on that person.
But it doesn't usually tell you where they're buried.
No, not unless Ancestry has an associated obituary with that information. Newspapers.com is a very good source, and it's not free to use, but you can look up information in newspapers from all around the United States. For here in Oklahoma, I like to use a website called Gateway to Oklahoma History, and it is free. The Oklahoma Historical Society has subsidized it, and they are in the process of scanning newspapers from all over Oklahoma. And they have gotten every single newspaper for Chickasha, which is a little town to the north of us. they have all of those newspapers scanned now. So I have been finding a lot of obituaries in that newspaper through the Oklahoma Gateway website and uploading those to Find a Grave. So it's always nice with Find a Grave if there is an obituary attached, and you can do that because it's a genealogy trail. It's a history of that person. It leaves that historical footprint, so to speak. And if you're into genealogy, like I say, I have found a lot of valuable information on relatives, located relatives in Find a Grave that I did not know about.
Wow.
So, like I say, it's just really interesting to do. I enjoy it.
It is pretty neat. And, you know, we, I say at the start of the video that, it's a little on the creepy side, hunting bodies, but I mean, there is a need for it.
It's a valuable tool.
It really is. And, especially if you don't know where a family member, possibly is in a cemetery, being able to douse it, can help you out if you know the lot, at least. You can get a generalized determination of if they're there or not, if there is a body. And then you've got to search through the records to be able to find out if, yes, in fact, they were buried there or not. But as always, I'm so happy to do a video with my mama. So until next time, much love, rock on, have a blessed day, everybody, and we'll see you in about 11 weeks. Peace out.